Alright, welcome back to the channel, you beautiful degenerates. Today we are diving into Ragna Crimson, a story about dragons, destiny, and a protagonist who currently has the survival instincts of a traffic cone. We start off in the woods, the natural habitat of generic fantasy monsters, where our boy Ragna, let's call him white-haired sad boy, is staring down the gullet of a dragon that looks like a rejected Godzilla extra. Look at this thing, it's all teeth and veins. And Ragna is just sitting there on the ground, completely dissociated, probably wondering if he left the stove on. His partner, Leo, who is approximately 3 feet tall and adorable, screams his name to snap him out of his coma. The dragon, realizing Ragna is basically an armored snack, lunges forward with zero hesitation. Leo yells, "It's coming your way!" which is helpful commentary. Thank you, Leo. The dragon swings a tail the size of a minivan, and Ragna barely manages to get his shield up. I mean, look at him getting ragdolled. He's flying through the air, shield rattling, absolutely fighting for his life against a mid-tier mob. It is not looking good for the home team. But wait, before Ragna gets turned into Dragon Chow, we get a sudden blur of motion. Violence. Absolute carnage. Leo, our resident pint-sized prodigy, comes flying in like a heat-seeking missile. She doesn't just block the attack, she obliterates the enemy. We're talking instant decapitation, blood everywhere, speed lines going crazy. It turns out the little girl is the actual DPS of this party, and Ragna is just the emotional support animal. She cleaves through this massive beast like it's made of wet tissue paper. She sticks the superhero landing, planting a sword that is literally bigger than her entire body into the ground, and smiles. She hits Ragna with the, "That was a close one, wasn't it?" while cracking a smile. Literally, her face is scuffed up, but she's beaming. She tells him he's got to stay sharp in battle just like me, completely oblivious to the fact that Ragna is currently hyperventilating and reevaluating his entire existence. Ragna looks at her with those dead, intense eyes, clutching his helmet like it's the only thing holding his sanity together, and says, "Thank you, Leo." And how does she respond to this heartfelt moment of gratitude? He gives her a head pat, literally pets her like a golden retriever. He's hovering in the air, patting the little girl on the head. She then said, "Don't mention it. We're comrades." That is the universal sign for, "I will carry you in this ranked match. Just try not to feed." Ragna accepts his fate as the sidekick in his own life, thanking her again while she hums a happy little tune. Talk about a skill gap. So, while the dragon is getting absolutely deleted from the server, the story decides it's the perfect time for a quick tutorial on how to murder mythical beasts. Apparently, there are only 2 ways to put these things in the ground. You either roast them in the sun like a vampire, or you freeze their blood using silverine, which is the fancy magical aura emitted by silver weapons. Basically, you turn them into a giant lizard popsicle, which honestly sounds like a terrible way to go. But hey, cash is cash. And speaking of cash, sad boy, Ragna starts inner monologuing about the economy of monster hunting, watching the dragon crumble into a pile of ash, and explaining that hunters like him make a living off these payments. Bro, hunters like you? You stood there and acted like a glorified meat shield while the 12-year-old did all the heavy lifting. That's stolen valor, my guy. Meanwhile, the actual MVP, Leo, is standing next to the disintegrating corpse, blushing and giggling like she just saw her crush, saying she loves that bubbly, steamy thing they do when they die. Okay, that is a massive red flag. Someone put this child on a watch list immediately. Then, with zero self-awareness, she claims she's nothing but an extra in this case. An extra? Kid, you just one-shot a boss monster while Ragna was hyperventilating. Stop the cap. Anyway, with another quest complete, they walk off into the sunset on February 21st, year 498, leaving a pile of smoke behind them. We cut to the Kingdom of Les, specifically the city of Ronabera, which looks surprisingly industrialized for a fantasy manga that just showed us a guy in full plate armor fighting a dragon in the woods. We've got trains, we've got cars, we've got a confusing mix of technology levels, standard inconsistent world building, moving on. As the dynamic duo walks through the streets, the NPCs start whispering, and by whispering, I mean loudly explaining the plot. They recognize Leonica the Prodigy, giving her all the clout. Rumor has it she's taken down 30 dragons solo. No wait, 50. Meanwhile, someone asks who the tall guy walking next to her is, and the response is literally, "Who cares?" Ouch. Ragna isn't just a side character, he's an NPC in his own party. They head to the Dragon Hunters Guild, which looks like a high school cafeteria for people with anger issues. Ragna, fully embracing his role as her hype man, monologues about how incredible she is, noting that the other hunters are looking at her with a mix of half fear and half jealousy. And why are these grown men jealous? Because she is 12. 12 years old. While these guys are paying taxes and struggling with back pain, this preteen is out here labeled the Born Hunter and the girl beloved by the sword. She grabs her bag of loot, payment, and immediately buys a loaf of bread, munching on it like a chipmunk. Then, with a mouthful of carbs, she looks at Ragna, hits him with the peace sign, and calls him my hero. I'm sorry. What? You did all the work. Ragna, instead of having a moment of self-reflection, pulls out a camera and starts taking candid photos of her eating, looking like a proud dad or a weird stalker. We move to the tavern, where Ragna is gushing about how lucky he is to record her sparkling growth year after year. Even Leo realizes this is getting weird, telling him straight up, "Good thing it's me you're talking to. Anyone else would call that creepy." But before Ragna can defend his scrapbooking hobby, we get an interruption. Some greasy-looking guy leans back in his chair and decides to roast our boy, asking if he's enjoying living off the leftover scraps from the high and mighty prodigy herself. Shots fired. Ragna just wanted to eat his soup in peace, but no, we have to deal with Draco Malfoy over here. So, Greasy McPonytail over here introduces himself as Sykes Charluke, screaming at the top of his lungs that he's the number 2 rank holder in Dragon Kills. He's posing, he's flexing, he's expecting an autograph request. And Leo? She looks at him with those big, empty anime eyes and hits him with the ultimate disrespect. I have no idea who you are, sorry. Emotional damage. That is a critical hit to the ego. But Sykes, clearly not used to rejection, decides if he can't impress the girl, he'll just bully her dad. Her partner. He turns his attention to Ragna and starts unloading. He calls him baggage, says he's not even useful enough to carry hers, and claims Ragna is completely below average. The entire tavern starts laughing because apparently bullying the quiet kid is the national sport in this kingdom. Sykes gets confident. Way too confident. He leans in right into Ragna's personal space with a sword, or maybe just a really aggressive finger, and whispers that they'd hate for something bad to happen to the prodigy because of you. He's doing the whole bad guy monologue routine, calling Ragna a son of a, and that is the exact moment he realized he messed up. Zoom, the scene explodes. We're talking tables flipping, cutlery flying at Mach 10, and Sykes looking like his life just flashed before his eyes. Leo has gone from cute mascot to demon lord in 0.5 seconds. She's standing there, vibrating with rage, asking him, glory, status, wealth, how far will you go for it? She stares into his soul with eyes that scream murder and asks, what do you seek with your silver sword? Sykes is sweating bullets. His goons are terrified, and Ragna is just standing there like, yep, that's my kid. So Leo is standing there, radiating pure final boss energy, and she decides to clarify her career goals for the terrified audience. She tells them straight up, I seek ultimate strength. She's not here for the retirement package, folks. She declares that she wants to be stronger than anyone and anything, and that she plans to hunt down every single dragon until she finds their dragon god wherever it is. Essentially, she wants to solo the entire server. She spins around, pointing her oversized sword at the crowd, and screams, whatever it takes! I am the strongest in the world. Then she makes a recruitment pitch that would get rejected by HR immediately. She asks if there is a single person out there who wants to join her in a bloody life dedicated to the hunt. She even offers to give them all the wealth, status, and glory because she doesn't care about the loot, only the grind. The room is dead silent because, obviously, that sounds like a suicide pact. But then one hand goes up. It's Ragna. Of course it's Ragna. He raises his hand like a good little student and says with zero hesitation, I'll go with you. I'll go with you as far as I can, Leo. The codependency is strong with this one. And just like that, the demon mode deactivates. Leo smiles, blushing like a normal kid, and says, that's why I like you, Ragna. She hands him the massive bag of money she just earned and starts nagging him like a mother, reminding him to take a bath and brush your teeth before bed. Ragna just nods and says, okay, completely whipped. The entire tavern, including the guy she just almost impaled, watches in horror as someone shouts, are you actually bathing together too? Even Sykes is crying tears of confusion in the corner. After the tavern turns into a confused mess of admiration and concern for their hygiene habits, we cut to the hotel room later that night. Leo is out cold, snoozing away like she didn't just threaten to murder a room full of people. Ragna, being the responsible guardian/insomniac, decides to sneak out. You'd think he's heading to a secret party, or maybe to buy more bread, but no, the door clicks shut, and he heads into the darkness. This man goes down to the riverbank in the middle of the night to swing his sword at the air. This is his dirty little secret, folks. He waits for his carry to fall asleep so he can try to farm some XP offline. He even admits, I'm not proud of it, like he's confessing to a crime. Bro, it's just training. You don't have to make it sound like you're dealing illicit substances behind the Denny's. But then, the mood takes a nosedive. We get a glimpse into Ragna's headspace, and it is bleak. He drops the hard truth on himself. I have no talent as a hunter. He knows that even if he grinds for 100 years, he's never catching up to the 12-year-old wonder kid. He's fully accepted that he is an expendable side character. He literally says, I'll be eaten by a dragon long before then anyway. Jesus, man, where is the self-preservation? But here's the thing that makes him the ultimate simp of the century. He swings that sword with desperation and screams internally, but I'm fine with that. He doesn't care if he dies a horrible, crunchy death, as long as he can do some tiny amount of good for her before he checks out. That is, actually kind of sad, and terrified, but mostly sad. Ragna is basically pre-coping with his own funeral just so Leo can get a slightly better KD ratio. But just when you think we're done with the self-loathing pity party, a mysterious figure in a cloak shows up to crash the training session. Ragna tries to hit him with the "that will not happen" denial, but Mr. Spooky Cloak drops the ultimate spoiler. You will lose her. And suddenly we aren't in a generic fantasy anymore. We are in a horror movie. Ragna finds himself standing in an inferno, surrounded by charred corpses, looking around like he missed a page in the script asking, what is this? Then, the manga decides to absolutely traumatize us. We see Leo, our invincible dragon-slaying prodigy, turned into a human pincushion. She is literally skewered by 1,000 black spikes, blood everywhere, looking like a discarded voodoo doll. And because this is an anime, instead of screaming in agony, she gently looks at Ragna with one eye open and says, Ragna, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? Dying? Kid, you have bigger problems right now. Ragna reacts exactly how you'd expect. He breaks. He falls to his knees in the flames, clutching his chest and screaming at the sky with tears and snot running down his face. But, plot twist, he wakes up gasping for air in a grassy field. It was a dream. Or was it? Because instead of going back to sleep like a normal person, he stares at his trembling hands, seeing the back of that mysterious cloaked figure again, and ominously declares, it's almost time. Ragna, buddy, if your dreams are coming with scheduling notifications, you need to see a therapist, not a dragon. We jump from the nightmare realm back to the strategy room, or whatever you call a table where a bunch of guys look at a map and pretend they know what's going on. The intel is weird. Dragons are migrating east in unison. And where are they going? To a place called Dona Pieru. Now listen to this death flag. They call Dona Pieru the city that needs no dragon hunters, because it hasn't been attacked in decades. That is the anime equivalent of a cop saying, I'm 2 days away from retirement. That city is doomed. It is absolutely going to get leveled. Cut to Ragna, who is trying to ignore the impending apocalypse by focusing on pastry logistics. He tells Leo that if they go to Dona Pieru, they should hit up a famous cake shop. Meanwhile, Leo is sitting directly on his lap, slurping a drink, because apparently, personal boundaries do not exist in this partnership. While she's thinking about sugar, Ragna is internally spiraling, admitting he's had the Leo turns into a pincushion dream every single night since the encounter. He's trying to figure out if the cloaked edgelord from his vision is a ghost, an illusion, or just his own anxiety manifesting. Leo, who has the situational awareness of a hawk, notices Ragna is spacing out again. She immediately assumes he's sad because of the guy at the bar and offers, very casually I might add, to go crush him like a bug. I love her problem-solving skills. Someone hurt your feelings? I will liquidate them. But then she grabs his hand and feels the calluses. She sees the bags under his eyes. She realizes her baggage handler has been working overtime. The mood shifts instantly. She gets right up in his grill, grabbing his face with a look that says, tell me the truth, or I bite, and demands to know what's driving him so hard. She asks, what can I actually do for you, Leo? Wait, she's referring to herself in the third person, or asking him? No, she's asking how she can be a source of strength for him. She's tired of just being the talent while he cleans up the mess. She wants to know why he's killing himself to get stronger when she's already the strongest. It's a surprisingly tender interrogation. Ragna tries to pull the self-pity card, claiming he has no talent compared to her, but Leo shuts that down immediately. She hits him with a flat, nope, you don't, regarding his current skills. Ouch, honesty. But then she taps into her genius intuition and claims that one day he is going to be absolutely cracked at the game, way stronger than he is now. She smiles that terrifyingly pure smile, hugs him, and promises to protect him until that time comes. It's a sweet moment, assuming you ignore the fact that she is 12 and he is a grown man relying on her for survival. And speaking of reliance, we finally get the tragic backstory drop. Flashback time. We see a younger Ragna getting absolutely jumped by a mob of angry villagers. They're stomping him out, calling him cursed scum, and accusing him of working for the dragons. Why? Because everywhere this guy goes, dragons show up and burn the place to the ground. His parents? Eaten. His relatives? Eaten. The rich family he was sold to? You guessed it, dragon buffet. But the kicker is that Ragna never dies. He just survives the attacks while everyone else gets turned into charcoal. He's lying in the dirt, asking the universe if there's anywhere safe to live, when suddenly, a wild Leo appears. She's tiny, holding a sword twice her size, and casually asks, "Hey, mister, want to hunt dragons with me?" She looks at his curse and goes, "Actually, having a connection to dragons is a plus," basically telling him that being a dragon magnet is a job qualification. Then she drops the simplest philosophy ever. You die because you're weak. If you're stronger than a dragon, you won't die. She declares, "I'm strong, so I won't die," and drags him along for the ride. From that day on, Ragna became the glorified sidekick. We get a montage of Leo absolutely carrying this man through raids, saving his life from massive dragons, while he just watches in awe, screaming, "So much power!" Ragna admits internally that he cannot imagine this kid dying before I do. And for everyone questioning their relationship status earlier, yes, the manga doubles down. We see them cutting hair together, sleeping in the same bed, and yup, there's a panel of them in the bath together. The codependency levels are off the charts, folks. We are back in Ragna's head. And folks, the codependency has reached critical levels. He's internally monologuing that he doesn't want to be with Leo just until a dragon gets me, which implies he thinks he's on a timer. No, he wants to be with her as long as I can, because he doesn't have any other hopes. That is bleak. Get this man a hobby. Meanwhile, Leo hits him with the, "Do you still think you're cursed?" which is ironic considering what's about to happen. Ragna wakes up in a cold sweat, tears literally streaming down his face, gasping, "So soon?" It looks like his prophetic nightmare subscription just auto-renewed, and the notification is bad news. We cut to February 27th, and the guild hall is in absolute chaos. Remember that city Donapieru? The one they called the city that needs no dragon hunters? Yeah, it's gone. Deleted. People are screaming, "Donapieru has fallen," and asking how many dragons attacked, but nobody knows anything. Sykes, our favorite greased-up antagonist, is getting harassed by the mob for answers. He screams, "I don't know either," and admits that a swarm of dragons attacked at nightfall, and contact was lost immediately. So much for being number 2, huh? Useless. In the middle of this panic, Ragna is standing there looking like he's seen a ghost. He's pale, sweating, and zoning out so hard that Leo has to ask, "What's the matter?" Ragna stares at her, trembling, mumbling, "How come?" He knows. He knows the timeline is wrong. And then, doom. A massive impact shakes the entire building. Something just landed, folks. Leo shouts, "What was that?" But Ragna is frozen. The war isn't happening in some distant city anymore, it just knocked on their front door. So the boom wasn't just a noise complaint, it was the start of the apocalypse. We cut outside to see the city isn't just burning, it's being erased. People are screaming, "Fire!" But last I checked, fires don't usually involve giant, building-sized feet stomping on downtown. Ragna's PTSD is kicking in hard because he recognizes the vibe immediately. Blood is flame. Out of the inferno walks a guy who is completely naked and built like a Greek statue, which is usually the first sign that you are about to die. One of the local knights, clearly failing his perception check, runs up to him all concerned, asking, "Hey you, are you all right? You're all bloodied." "My brother in Christ, the man is walking out of a blast zone without a scratch. Do not engage." The naked guy mumbles, "Blood is blades," and instantly turns his own blood into high-velocity spikes, shredding the helpful knight into confetti. That is what you get for being a good Samaritan in a grimdark manga. And then, just to make sure we know we're screwed, the boss music starts playing. The dragon shape-shifted into a gentleman wearing a 3-piece suit, because apparently you have to look professional while committing genocide. Steps forward. He's got a horde of nightmares behind him, spreads his arms like he's welcoming them to a TED Talk, and says, "Greetings, humans." He flashes a smile full of razor-sharp teeth and drops the tagline, "Death is upon you." Well, at least he's polite about it. So, Mr. Fancy Suit Dragon decides that introductions are over and it's time to skip straight to the violence. He mumbles, "Blood is flame and literally detonates himself like a tactical nuke. There is a massive kaboom. The bridge is destroyed and Ragna, our protagonist, remember him? Gets yeeted into the river like a skipped stone. Great job, hero. 2 minutes into the raid and you're already out of bounds. While Ragna is practicing his backstroke, the city turns into a war zone. The soldiers panic and scream, "Open fire!" unloading their muskets into the smoke, but they might as well be shooting spitballs. The dragons are just eating the bullets and then eating the people. It's a bad time. Sykes, who is actually trying to be useful for once, analyzes the situation and realizes this isn't a normal Tuesday. He explains that while medial dragons can talk, this guy in the suit is a superior dragon, because he looks exactly like a human and has perfectly advanced intelligence. Basically, he's a Smurf account destroying low-level players. But Leo? Leo doesn't care about the taxonomy of dragons. She is furious. She turns to Sykes, the guy she roasted at the bar earlier, and starts barking orders. She screams, "Sykes, go get Ragna! He fell in the river. He's still alive." She tells him, "I'm counting on you," effectively demoting the number 2 hunter to lifeguard duty. Then she turns back to the gentleman dragon, who is busy holding a headless corpse like a trophy, and her face goes full demon mode. She growls, "How dare you? You hurt my Ragna." "Oh, now it's personal. You can burn down the city, sure, but you touched her emotional support human? You've really done it now." She stares him down with veins popping on her forehead, ready to show this superior dragon why you don't mess with a 12-year-old who has attachment issues. While Leo is up on the surface trying to 1v1 a raid boss with nothing but Rag and a height disadvantage, Ragna is sinking like a stone, and we finally unlock the rest of the cutscene. He's not just drowning in water, he's drowning in the rest of that prophetic nightmare. And folks, if you thought his life was sad before, welcome to the bad ending. We get a montage of Ragna's future, and it is a conga line of misery. He reveals that after losing Leo, he goes on a reckless quest for revenge. He finds new friends. Yay! Oh wait, look at the panels. They die too. Every single one of them. He becomes a walking curse, fighting and grinding XP until he hits the level cap, then breaks the level cap, then breaks the game entirely. The narration gets almost incoherent with how edgy it is, talking about pushing to the limits of my limits of my limits. Bro, we get it, you did a lot of push-ups. He achieves strength beyond even that. You're hunting every last dragon out of existence, but it doesn't matter because his friends are still dead. And here is the cruelest cosmic joke of all. Future Ragna realizes he never died. He always survived, like a cockroach in a nuclear winter, and all he really wanted was a chance to die. We cut to the mental image of our current crybaby Ragna kneeling before the mysterious cloaked figure. The figure looks down, probably disgusted by his own weakness, and drops the bombshell. "This is your future, and my past." Boom. It's not a ghost, it's not a hallucination, it's New Game Plus Ragna coming back to fix his save file. So we are back in the mental breakdown dimension and the mysterious cloak guy finally drops the hood. To the surprise of absolutely nobody who understands how narrative tropes work, it is Ragna, but not our Ragna. This is future Ragna, the version who has seen some things, hasn't showered in 40 years, and listens exclusively to My Chemical Romance. Future Edgelord looks at his younger self, who is currently face down in the mud, and immediately starts roasting him. He tells him, "You worshipped a little girl as a hero. You wallowed in her strength." He calls him out for being a leech, saying, "If you truly cared for her, you should have made yourself stronger than anyone else." Damn, tell us how you really feel. Then, future Ragna starts the weirdest flex in history. He screams, "Now I am strong, stronger than anyone." He claims he can even hold his own against a dragon monarch, which sounds impressive until he immediately starts crying because he has not a single thing left to protect. He's having a full midlife crisis, asking, "Why am I so strong? And what's the point?" "Sir, this is a Wendy's." He explains that he lost everything and pushed himself to the limits of my limits of my limits of my limits. Did you catch that? He said limits 4 times. He didn't just break the level cap, he broke the source code. He reached the strength that lies even beyond even that. Okay, we get it. You did a lot of push-ups. Present Ragna, realizing his future self is a walking cheat code, decides to skip the training arc entirely. He doesn't ask for advice. He grabs future Ragna by the collar and screams, "Give me your power!" "No, please. No, thank you. Just straight-up identity theft." He yells, "You may not need it now, but I do," regarding the useless strength of his grieving future self. Future Ragna, realizing this is the only way to fix his tragic backstory, agrees and shouts, "The time is now. initiating the ultimate data transfer. The server merge is happening, folks. So how exactly does one transfer decades of magical martial arts experience and god-tier strength? A USB drive? A mind meld? No. Future edgelord decides the most efficient data transfer method is to literally stab his younger self in the chest. Present Ragna looks down at the blade in his heart like, bro, really? And future Ragna just grins and says, that was my plan. Apparently, he needs all that strength now, which makes zero sense because he's fading away. But we roll with it because anime physics. The upload speed is terrifying. Ragna isn't just downloading a PDF, he is downloading pure agony. He screams like he's stepping on 1,000 Legos while a shockwave blasts out from his chest, physically knocking people over. Even Sykes, who was busy having a panic attack, gets blown back and screams, "What is that?" Future Ragna, now looking like a shadow demon, yells that the past and future are connected, and he is shoving all of my strength into this level 1 noob account. As the connection finalizes, future Ragna starts disintegrating, but he has one last message. He mentions he was told he would pay a price for this time travel nonsense, but he told the universe, I didn't care. He screams at his younger self, who is currently writhing on the ground, you are me, so I know your answer will be the same. He points a fading finger and gives the ultimate main quest objective. Reach for this future. You must save her. I leave it to you. And just like that, the veteran logs off, leaving the newbie with admin privileges and a massive headache. So while Ragna is down in the river installing his new operating system, we cut back to the surface where Leo is realizing that her genius might have a limit. She's panting, exhausted, staring at this guy who hasn't even broken a sweat, and she decides to ask the big question. Would you happen to be that dragon god or whatever? She admits she can't break his defense, but still tries to keep the banter alive by calling him pretty tough. But Mr. Fancy Suit does not have a sense of humor. He looks at her with pure disgust and asks, you would dare to compare the likes of me to the very god of our blood? He calls her an inferior animal and unleashes a massive shadow attack that looks like a visual representation of death itself. And then, he drops the classic shonen power scaling reveal that makes everyone lose hope. He introduces himself as Grimwelte, the 10th seed of the Blood of the Wing. And just to twist the knife, he clarifies that he is at the very bottom of the cohort that you call superior dragons. You hear that? The guy who just nuked the city and tanked Leo's best shots is the weakest one in the club. If this is the bottom of the barrel, humanity is officially cancelled. And if you thought the power scaling reveal was disrespectful, wait until you hear the motive. Grimwelte, the suit-wearing dragon who just nuked a city, decides to explain why this is happening. Is it for territory? Ancient revenge? Resources? No, it is about pastries. I am not joking. He looks Leo dead in the eye and says the god of their bloodline enjoys the sweet pastries that humankind creates. Apparently, the specific cake shop in this city got robbed and went out of business, which made the dragon god deeply saddened. And because this god has the emotional maturity of a toddler, they said, forget it, destroy the entire country. Are you kidding me? We are watching a genocide because a dragon couldn't get his strawberry shortcake. Grimwelte twists the knife, telling Leo that the fate and existence of human nations is decided entirely on our god's whims. He tells her she poses no threat to their bloodline and simply commands her to then die. And for the first time, Leo, the prodigy, the genius, the girl who thought she was the protagonist, looks absolutely broken. Her eyes are wide, trembling, realizing the sheer insignificance of her existence compared to these monsters. But just as Grimwelte prepares to turn her into a stain on the pavement, his danger senses finally start tingling. He stops mid-monologue, sweating, and looks behind him asking, what's happening? The other dragons are confused, but Grimwelte knows. A massive pillar of light erupts from the river, tearing through the street. Someone screams something's coming, but we all know who it is. The update is complete, boys. Ragna is back online, and I have a feeling he's about to give these dragons a very bad review of their customer service. So, the pillar of light fades, and out walks Ragna. But this isn't the trembling back, self-loathing sidekick we saw 5 minutes ago. This man is walking with the swagger of someone who has read the strategy guide cover to cover. The dragons, lacking any survival instincts whatsoever, try to jump him, but before they can even land a hit, they just break. I don't mean they die, I mean they shatter like cheap glass in a microwave. Ragna doesn't even look at them. He just walks, and the monsters around him disintegrate into frozen dust. We get a peek into the downloaded memories of future Ragna, and folks, This guy didn't just train. He broke the game mechanics entirely. The narration tells us he fought them again and again, surviving purely out of spite. He fought, and he won. And won. And won. And won. The page is literally covered in the word won, just to drive home the point that this man has no chill. Eventually, swinging a sword wasn't enough, so he decided to become the sword. He explains that after 10 years of non-stop violence, his arm and sword began to become one. By year 5, his flesh had turned into a weapon that exuded silverine, which is that anti-dragon freeze energy we talked about earlier. Essentially, he became a walking nuclear reactor of dragon poison. He spent decades mastering this, passing the bounds of human ability time and again, until he reached the absolute peak. Ragna stands there, surrounded by freezing aura, and unveils the silverine battle arts. He calls it the pinnacle of dragon slaying, and looking at the frozen, shattered corpses piling up around him, I'm inclined to believe him. Grimwelty, realizing that his entourage just got turned into snow cones, decides to take matters into his own hands. He launches a high-speed attack, but Ragna doesn't even flinch. He just sidesteps the blow like he's bored, and suddenly, the 10th seat starts sweating bullets. Grimwelta feels a sensation he's only ever felt from the monarchs, his bosses, and realizes he is standing in front of a predator. He stares into Ragna's eyes and starts panicking, thinking, that is impossible, because his brain cannot compute how a human is terrifying him this much. He realizes this isn't just a hunter. This is someone possessing absolute power, and for the first time in his life, the dragon is feeling awe and terror. So, what does a generic villain do when they realize they are outmatched? They initiate the transformation sequence. Grimwelta screams, "Behold my true form," and explodes into a massive spiked monstrosity, bragging that his magical essence is now at full potency. He thinks being bigger is going to save him. Spoiler alert, it won't. Ragna stands there, looking at this skyscraper-sized beast, and simply raises his hand. He doesn't scream. He doesn't charge up a beam. He just commands, "Freeze." Instantly, the superior dragon turns into a giant ice sculpture. The massive beast is halted mid-roar, frozen solid by the silverine aura. Ragna looks at the statue, snaps his fingers and whispers, "Shatter." And just like that, the guy who destroyed a country over a strawberry shortcake crumbles into a million pieces of shaved ice. So, Grimwelta is currently a pile of crushed ice on the pavement, and you'd expect Ragna to drop a cool one-liner, maybe a cleanup on aisle 5 or something. But no. The adrenaline wears off, and the trauma kicks in immediately. Ragna looks at Leo, who is standing there completely confused because her baggage just one-shot a superior dragon, and he starts screaming her name like he just woke up from a coma. We get a flash of the terrible day from the bad future, where old man Ragna wished he could have had just one more chance to see you. And then, he tackles her. Not an attack, folks, just a full-on, desperate hug. He clutches her to his chest and starts absolutely bawling. The narration says he wept long and loud, which is the polite way of saying he is ugly crying in the middle of a war zone. Leo, being the chaotic gremlin she is, doesn't freak out. She doesn't ask how he got superpowers. She just pats him on the head, smiles that goofy smile, and says, "You must have been working really, really hard." Ragna is flooded with decades of pent-up emotion from a future that no longer exists, sobbing, "I'm alive," over and over again, while his tears just won't stop. It is a surprisingly wholesome ending to a chapter that started with a dragon genocide. We open Chapter 2 with everything awful, and someone is about to cry. We get a lovely scenic shot of the kingdom, which currently looks less like a fantasy capital and more like a buffet line for the local crow population. The streets are littered with charred statues. And by statues, I mean the carbonized remains of innocent civilians. Great start, very wholesome. Cut to our resident sad boy, Ragna, waking up in a surprisingly luxurious bed considering the apocalypse happening outside. He pulls the classic amnesiac maneuver, staring at the ceiling and muttering, "Where am I?" before his brain decides to buffer. Suddenly, the PTSD kicks in faster than a dial-up connection. He gets a flash of a terrifying eye, panics, and immediately starts screaming, "Where's Leo?" Completely ignoring the fact that the pint-sized prodigy is sleeping soundly, literally 6 inches away from his face. Dude, check your peripheral vision. Also, sleeping with a giant silver sword leaning against the mattress? Osho would like a word. But Ragna isn't actually seeing the room anymore. His brain is remixing memories from his future self, and we are dragged right back into the bad timeline. He hallucinates that he's sitting in the rubble of a destroyed city, clutching what implies to be a body part, while flies and crows circle him like he's spoiled meat. He starts swiping at thin air, screaming at the birds to get away and leave Leo alone, completely losing a fight against enemies that aren't even there. The hallucination hits its peak as he looks down and realizes he's holding Leo's severed braid, because nothing says character death like tragic hair symbolism. The realization breaks whatever snapped sanity he had left. We get the extreme close-up on his eyes dilating into pure madness, followed by a shot of him kneeling alone in a white void, screaming his lungs out next to his sword. We are 2 minutes into the episode, and the therapy bill is already astronomical. Back in reality, Ragna stops screaming long enough to actually look at the person next to him. And there she is, the pint-sized prodigy herself, Leo. Is she having a peaceful dream about puppies or rainbows? No, she's drooling all over the pillow, muttering about cutting off heads in her sleep. Never change, you violent little gremlin. This homicidal mumbling confirms she is indeed alive, so naturally, Ragna starts weeping again. Dude, hydrate. You are losing fluids rapidly. But his solo pity party is interrupted by the door slamming open. Enter this guy. Sykes. He walks in, sees a grown man sobbing over a sleeping child, and immediately asks the correct question. What are you sobbing for, you creepy little weirdo? Finally, someone in this manga has common sense. Sykes explains that he's generously letting them crash at his place because their previous inn is currently a pile of ash, and he demands gratitude because Ragna has been unconscious for a solid 24 hours. Ragna is shocked he slept through the apocalypse, but Sykes fills him in. The second the pastry dragon got turned into a popsicle, all the minion dragons realized they weren't built for this life and fled for the hills. Now for the war room briefing. Sykes lays it out. The city is half destroyed, there are bodies everywhere, and the fires have died down. He asks the million-dollar question. Do we stay, run to the capital, or bail on the kingdom entirely? Ragna, suddenly switching from weepy mess to tactical genius, immediately interrupts with, we should leave this country. He drops some heavy lore, explaining that the dragon god has ordered a complete server wipe on this entire land. Since dragons are religious zealots who follow orders literally, they won't chase the humans if they just leave the designated kill zone. Sykes looks at him, completely baffled by this sudden competency, and asks, Are you really Ragna? Valid question, Sykes. Yesterday he was luggage. Today he's a prophet of doom. Who I'm now officially calling Captain Hindsight, is absolutely losing his mind right now. He's looking at Ragna and screaming that the kid is just a spoiled, worthless daydreamer with zero talent or skill. But his brain is buffering because he distinctly remembers seeing Ragna unleash powers that were far beyond the limits of human strength to nuke that dragon. He gets right in Ragna's face, demanding to know, who are you? And Ragna's inner edgelord starts to answer with a dramatic, I am. But thankfully, we get interrupted by the sound of cuteness waking up. Leo, the actual MVP of this series, rubs the sleep out of her eyes and asks if Ragna's finally awake. She hits him with a cheery good morning, while Sykes is still standing there with his sword out like a third wheel. Ragna ignores the angry guy and immediately grabs Leo's face to check her temperature, noting she's still a bit feverish. He is having a full existential crisis just watching her move and talk, which is honestly kind of sweet until you remember he's looking at a 12-year-old. Leo mentions that he was the one burning up and moaning in his sleep after the fight, but Ragna is too busy having a moment to care. He starts bawling again. Drink every time Ragna cries, you'll be dead in 5 minutes, and screams her name while tackling her into a hug. He tells her, I'm alive, thanks to you, which is a total lie because we all know he got possessed by his future self. But sure, let's go with that. And speaking of the devil, Ragna's inner monologue starts spiraling, admitting that the guy who actually did the heavy lifting isn't here anymore. He realizes he wasn't the one who did the hard work. We get this super dramatic narration box about how he, meaning future Ragna, knew exactly what happened in this timeline and just wanted to see Leo alive one last time. We see a sad shot of the cloaked time traveler walking away into the void, satisfied that all his suffering was worth it just to see that she survived. It's a tearjerker moment, really beautiful stuff, until thud. Ragna immediately faceplants into Leo's lap and falls asleep. Sykes, who has been watching this soap opera unfold, throws his hands up and yells, What again? Honestly, Sykes, I feel you. This kid has the stamina of a dying iPhone. Leo, who is clearly the brains of this operation, just sits there petting the unconscious Ragna's head. She starts gaslighting Sykes, claiming that Ragna's sudden god-slaying power came from doing a ton of hard work while I wasn't looking. Sure, Leo. Just some off-screen grinding. She decides that since this power makes him unstable, someone needs to watch him. So obviously, he needs to keep me around. When Sykes asks how she knows all this, she shrugs and says, "A hunch," then immediately disrespects him by asking, "What are you doing here anyway?" Sykes finally snaps and screams, "This is my house," which is honestly the only reasonable reaction to these squatters. Thankfully, the sun starts to rise, signaling that the nightmare is over for now. We get some exposition that dragons are weak to the sun's light, so the survivors can finally breathe easy as long as the sun is up. But because we can't go 5 minutes without a new problem, Sykes looks out the window and notices something weird on the horizon. He stares at a massive, dense collection of trees and asks, "Was that forest here yesterday?" Spoiler alert, Sykes. Forests don't usually speedrun their growth cycle in 6 hours. We cut to Leo, who takes one look at the gigantic wall of timber dwarfing the city walls and hits us with her expert analysis. She says, "My genius instincts say so. Yikes. That forest is bad news. Thanks for the intel, Einstein. I could have told you the sudden appearance of a demon forest was bad news, but okay." Down on the ground, we meet 2 red-shirt soldiers investigating the tree line. One guy is terrified, but the other guy, let's call him Famous Last Words, scoffs and says, "I bet it's some illusion created by the dragons," before calling his friend a coward. And because karma is immediate in this manga, the illusion instantly whips out a branch and snatches him up like a claw machine prize. The trees start going absolutely berserk, yoinking soldiers into the sky while screaming erupts everywhere. Massive roots burst through the city streets, tossing people around like ragdolls. The local commander starts screaming for anyone who can fight to grab a weapon, while Sykes watches from his window screaming, "What?" for the 50th time this morning. So much for that peaceful morning coffee. The forest is attacking us. Just in case the giant killer trees weren't subtle enough. We then cut to the mastermind behind this botanical nightmare, and folks, he is certainly a design choice. Meet the writhing shade, a blob of a man sitting on a tree throne, laughing like a bargain bin Jabba the Hutt. He explains his grand plan. He dragonized the lower halves of the trees to create a walking forest. Why? To physically block out the sun with branches so he can stay outside during the day. It's essentially a weaponized parasol. And if that wasn't creepy enough, we see his dinner service. A terrified chef trembles as he presents lamb baked in a pastry crust to the Lord Temruogtaf. The chef is sweating bullets, probably because his entire left leg has turned into a tree branch mid-shift. Nothing says fine dining like slowly turning into furniture while serving appetizers. That is a serious workplace safety violation, my guy. Temruogtaf takes a delicate bite, praises the spring vegetables, and gives his compliments to the chef, calling it delicious. The chef starts crying tears of relief, thinking he actually survived the service with his life. But because this is a dark fantasy manga and we can't have nice things, the fat dragon leans in and whispers, "But the flavor is nothing compared to yours." He casually mentions that the chef's leg he ate earlier was much better, and swallows the rest of the poor guy whole like a gummy bear. The maid standing nearby, who clearly hates her job, just watches as Temruogtaf wipes his mouth and laments that he can't share his God's refined tastes, because he's just a glutton from the periphery of the bloodline. He decides that his pleasure wins out and declares it time to feast, causing the trees to go into a frenzy, scooping up civilians like popcorn for the largest feast in centuries. Meanwhile, Sykes is down in the streets trying to play Lumberjack Simulator 2024. He slices through a branch with his silver sword, and it instantly freezes, confirming his suspicion. So it is a dragon. But then his brain finally connects the dots on the unfair game mechanics. He knows dragons cannot attack us while the sun is out. But as he looks up at the dense canopy blocking the sky, he realizes the cheat code. The trees create their own shade, so as long as they block the light, the dragons can ignore the server rules and kill everyone. Sykes screams, "Damn it!" because he realizes the one basic fact of their survival can no longer be relied upon. Let's get back to Jabba the Tree Hut. He's currently justifying his eating disorder by claiming, "God said to wipe you out," which is a convenient excuse for turning the entire city into an all-you-can-eat buffet. He grabs his poor maid with a tentacle, because of course this guy has tentacles, and drools over the idea that he gets to eat every last human in this land. It's less of a divine crusade and more of a caloric surplus, really. Meanwhile, Back at the Airbnb from hell, Sykes is watching his property value hit rock bottom. A massive root smashes through the wall, obliterating the bedroom. And where is our hero? Ragna, who apparently hit the snooze button on the apocalypse, is currently being dragged out the window like a sack of laundry, still mostly unconscious. Leo is screaming his name in panic, while Sykes is in the corner screaming, "My house!" Sykes, read the room, my guy. The security deposit is gone. As Ragna dangles upside down, looking like a very depressed piñata, his subconscious finally decides to clock in. We get this creepy internal visual of a bandaged figure telling him, "I am accursed. Do not forget." It's the classic "I'm too dangerous to have friends" emo monologue kicking in right on schedule. But before he can finish brooding, Leo goes full action hero. She launches herself into the air, slices the root cleanly in half, and shouts, "That's 10!" presumably counting her kills like she's grinding XP. She saves Ragna from becoming tree fertilizer, proving once again that she is the only competent person on this team.